Welcome back to Deep Dive with Dan Jones and part two of our video with retired Command Master Chief Justin Gray on his leadership journey and leadership in general. Okay, so now that we've dished on MacArthur,
I went down that rabbit hole.
yeah, poor guy can't get any rest.
So I guess California I was there for 3 years on that ship,
Right.
And it was I was promoted to second class. I was never really placed in charge of anybody,
Right.
right? I also was not the best sailor,
Okay.
right? I was always that guy who would do what he was told, but not without telling you exactly what I thought about what you told me.
Okay. Yep. That's a great way to start out a career.
Right? Yeah, it's perfect. And I was not happy, right? And
Why was that?
because I was fighting every day,
Okay.
right? If you fight the system you're in every single day, and justly or unjustly,
Right.
in my case, it was just I was a kid and
Yeah.
needed to grow up,
Yeah.
right? But you're fighting the system every day. It's exhausting,
Yeah.
right? And in my case, I was miserable. All right. So there came a time toward the very end of that tour, and then when I transferred to go to Italy to my next ship, it was a very hard conversation with the person in the mirror. Like, do you want to keep doing this and fighting it every day, or do you want to really just like make this your career, right? Because while I said I want to do that, you can say I want to be a firefighter too when you're a kid,
Right.
and not really understand what that means.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, hang on a second, because I mean, I went home and told Dad, stop leaning on you so hard. I said, this kid knows what the hell he's doing.
Yeah.
Now you're telling me that, maybe you were giving me like some soft soap there.
Not necessarily. Like, I thought I knew what I wanted to do, but
Right.
a lot of times when you're a kid, you see the top of the mountain and
Right.
where you want to be,
Okay.
but what you don't see is the mountain, right? That you have to climb to get to where you want to be.
Yeah,
Right.
all the pitfalls, the abyss that you've got to jump over,
Right.
and crevasse. Yeah.
And you got to be the bottom person for a while,
Right.
right? You don't
Yeah.
just start at the top,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
You have to start at the bottom.
Yep.
And so so I had that, and I decided that instead of fighting the system day in and day out and being miserable,
Mhm.
maybe I should figure out how the system works, right? And then figure out which levers I have to pull to make it work for me,
Okay.
right? And that made all the difference in the world when I got to my next command,
Okay.
right? And on the way there, I got promoted to E6. So
about how old were you at this point when you ended up going to Italy?
I was in the Navy. When I got promoted to E6, I was in the Navy for 6 years, so I was 24 years old.
Okay. Yeah. Pretty young for an E6.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. So even as you were bucking the system, you were still managing to get the marks.
Yeah. Still learning, right?
Right.
But in the Navy, unlike a lot of other places, and probably the military in general, right? You have what you do is part of it, like your technical skill, right? And then your military side of things, right? And I was getting better and pretty good at this. I wasn't as good at this.
Okay. Yeah.
Right. So once I got to Italy, I made first class. I was in a command. My previous command had like some climate issues, right? Like, and by command climate, I mean like the environment, like the culture,
Yeah.
right?
Okay.
They had been in a refueling overhaul for like 4 years. It was supposed to take 3. They at one point were in shift work with no days off
Right.
for 6 months.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Right. So as you might have expected, morale was really low.
Yep.
People hated it, right? They hated, I hate this place was probably something you heard like 100 times a day. So I get to Italy, and here's a place where everybody who was there had asked to be there because everybody was on like their second tour. So they had all said, "Hey, I want to go to this place." So completely different mentality, right? The
Right.
people aren't placed there; they asked to go there, right? So different mentality, much more senior group, right? And through a confluence of circumstance, so I was the most junior E6 there. And so through this confluence of circumstances, I end up being the work center supervisor over people that are much more senior than me in time in the Navy. So I got 6 years in the Navy, and I have people that have been in the Navy like 14 years working for me. And that rankled, right?
Yeah.
And there was like some moments where there was almost like a coup. Like, I know how to do this better than you. I'm going to do it. I'm like, yeah, you probably do. And I'm going to listen to your input because I value it. Because you do have more experience, but ultimately I'm responsible for how this gets executed. So if I don't agree with you, we're doing what I say.
Okay. So I want to pause there though. I want to ask you, you're 24, 25 at this point, right? Now you got people that are 7, 8 years older than you. Where did you learn to go, I'm going to listen to you, but ultimately I'm the one that makes the decision? Because that's not something that most people are innately born with.
Yeah, so I think it came, well, first of all, if you're placed in charge of something, when I'm placed in charge of something,
Right.
and someone tries to take it away or do it in a way that I don't like, I immediately like my hackles get up. Like this
You
is
bristle at it.
this is mine to do,
Right.
right? And for good or for bad, it's mine to do, right? So if I'm gonna get held responsible for the outcome, I'm sure hell gonna be involved in it,
Right.
right? So that's the where did I pick that up? I'm uncertain, to be honest. Like I don't remember like an instance where what on my first ship, like rewind,
Right.
like I got fired from a job that I was assigned to do, and I received a performance evaluation, which I carried for a long, long time.
Right.
That said, Pastor Gray is an excellent technician, handicapped only by his motivation.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
And it made me mad, and this goes back to the leadership piece of that chief petty officer that I had at the time, right? Like, that was exactly what I needed to hear, even though I didn't want to hear that. Nobody wants that said of them,
Right.
much less written on their performance evaluation.
Yep.
Right. But probably the best thing he could have done for me. Because
do you think he did it to motivate you?
yeah, I do.
That he understood your nature enough that by telling you that your lack of motivation was, what it took to get you motivated?
Right. Because we all say we want feedback
Right.
until we get feedback.
Yeah.
Right. That's not good.
Right.
Right. Everybody's like, oh yeah, give me feedback. And then like, oh, you do great.
But being the type of leader that can figure out what type of feedback that this person needs to hear versus what that person needs to hear, that's a great skill, because not everybody can do that.
And that guy had lots of shortcomings.
Right.
But in this case, that was probably the best thing he could have done for me. Which, probably contributed to that conversation in the mirror, right? But at the end of the day, when I was put in that position, I had a meeting with all these first classes, so they're E6s.
Right.
Like, look, I know that you guys are senior to me in time and grade and, time and service, but they've asked me to do this and I value all of your opinions. It's like, but I'm still in charge.
Yep.
And that's an uncomfortable conversation to have,
Yep.
but you can't not have it.
Right.
Because if you don't have it, it's like death by 1,000 cuts.
Mhm.
Right? Every single time they go in a different way than you needed them to go. Because they think they know better or they're just bitter
Right.
about the situation they find themselves
What we
in.
say now, butt hurt.
Yeah. The worse it's going to get.
Yep. Yep.
Right. And had that heart to heart meeting with them again.
Right.
Right. When it wasn't going well. And they all got on board. Right. And then life was pretty good.
So is there any, were you reading any books? Were you doing any courses on leadership? Were you talking to maybe some chiefs or senior chiefs to get input, or were you just winging this and you're just a natural?
So I had another first class petty officer that was the leading petty officer at the time that I was the works nurse advisor. And he and I are still best friends today, best of friends. And we would consult on a lot of these, and he had like 10 years more in service,
Right.
time in service than I did. So, we would consult on these things. So he was a big help. The chiefs that we had at the time, this guy named Paul Hess, who was in many ways awful, because he was the definition of a micromanager. Like, some people they say micromanager, and what it really is they just don't like people like looking over their shoulders and making sure they're doing their job, holding them accountable, right? This dude, he's like, hey, I need you to clean up before we go home today. Okay. You come back and, hey, chief, it's done. And he's like, did you sweep all the decks? Yes, chief, we did. Did you sweep all the little piles into a dustpan? Yes, chief, we did. Did you throw that dustpan in the trash? Yes. Did we take the trash? Yes.
Yep.
Right. Like, so
I had a sergeant exactly like that. It was the most frustrating thing in the world.
Yeah. So every single interaction with him was like,
Yeah.
right. So it was hard, but did I learn something? Yes. I learned when I went to talk to him, I needed to have all my stuff, all my ducks in a row. And I still had not mastered the, I have to say something when you say,
Right.
And we would go around and around. And he also gave me a really good piece of feedback, and he was comparing and contrasting me with Norm, my friend.
Right.
And he's like, whenever I go talk to him, I just tell him what I want. And he's like, and he goes and does it. He's like, whenever I come tell you to do something, he's like, I feel like I gotta gird my loins and be prepared for battle. He's like, so whenever he says something to me, I really have to evaluate my position. Like, did I tell him to do something wrong, or what is he doing? And that's not always the case with you. I just have to fight with you to get my point across. And so I took that lesson on board, because nobody had ever really laid it out like that. And kind of, if you distill it down to, like, if you broadcast all the time, people tune you out.
Right.
Right. So that really kind of shaped, those couple of events kind of shaped how I approach leadership then on. Right. Because the loudest person in the room isn't always right.
No.
Right.
Yeah.
Often not right.
Yeah.
Right. And substitutes volume for substance.
Yep.
So do you, that conversation actually significantly tempered my approach to leading people and providing feedback up and down, the chain.
Okay.
So that was an interesting time.
Yeah. Yeah, no,
But-
it sounds like it.
But yeah, I probably would say I probably grew the most, the fastest in those 2 years that I was there. From a professional leadership development.
Yeah, right.
Then roll back to New York, get sent to an instructor tour back on that living, breathing reactor.
Right.
Selected for chief petty officer there.
Yep.
And whenever you are selected for chief petty officer, you go through chief's initiation, right? And you go, and that initiation, way back in the day was just get drunk and beat up the new guy,
Right.
right? Like real frat boy kind of stuff. And over the course of my time in the Navy, it was professionalized to where it is, no kidding, like 6 to 8 weeks of real intense leadership training.
Right.
Um,
But when you say real intense leadership training, is it classroom or it's more informal with people that are already chiefs, like in structured environments, like maybe sports or, activities and conversations, or is it a mixture of?
So yes, it's all of those.
It's all of those. Okay.
Right?
Mm.
You get this thing called a charge book where you have to go see people in a one-on-one environment to get their charge,
Right.
right? And what that charge is, they write down what they think it takes to be a good chief petty officer. So by the time you're done, like that's a tool to facilitate a one-on-one conversation with you and a bunch of people who know how to do the job that you're getting ready to do.
So you write down the charge for yourself, or
No, they write,
each person gives you a charge that you put into a book?
yeah, each person gives you a charge. to
Okay.
put in
Yeah, it's
your book.
what a valuable tool.
Yeah, I still
That
have,
really is.
still have mine. It's upstairs,
Yeah,
right?
okay.
And I still read it.
Right.
Um,
Well, were there any chiefs that you met that you're like, that guy's an asshole, and you just tore his page out? Like, I don't want to, learn anything from him, or annotated at least, like, what
No.
not to do.
No, there were certainly people that I said that guy's an asshole, right?
Right.
And I don't want to be like him.
Right.
But even then, the things that they write in the book have some thought to them.
Okay.
As a rule, by and large. So there's a lot of, to the servant leader, you'll read over and over again, and many of them, don't forget where you came from.
Right.
But I would write in people's books, in order to remember where you came from, you have to leave.
That's good.
Right.
Yeah.
So with the point being, I don't need you to, like, if you don't see yourself and your position in this organization as fundamentally different at the end of this process than when you began it, then I have failed you.
Right.
So you have to see yourself in a new role. You have to envision yourself in this organization in a different place than you were 6 weeks ago.
Right.
Or else you're just a better paid first class petty officer.
Right. So, you say, if they don't see this, then, you have failed them. That's a legitimate feeling that you have if you've come across somebody like that. That's not just you writing down, something. You legitimately, I know from conversations with you that you've had sailors and NCOs underneath you that have not achieved their greatness or their full potential, and that you've actually taken it like as a personal failure.
In some cases, yes, because there's a saying in the military, like, you spend like 80% of time on 20% of your people.
Right. Yeah.
Or 90% of your time on 10% of your people.
Right.
Like pick your number. And usually when you say that, they talk about it's the bottom 10%, right? The troublemakers, the people that have, financial issues or marital problems or can't get with the program, like me when I was on the, the
Right.
first command. So
Go out, drink all their rent money, and then,
yeah,
run the risk of their family getting kicked out of housing or something.
yeah, come in and say, hey, I bought this car, it's got 130,000 miles on it, and I got a great deal, 45 grand at 30% interest, right? So the the thing that I always wanted to do is I did not want to invest 90% of my time in 10%, the bottom 10%.
Right.
Right. I wanted to invest 90% of my time in the top 10%. And not because these people aren't worthy of being led or you just leave them behind. No, you say you invest in them to the point where it becomes clear that they're not interested
Right.
in getting better.
Right.
Right. I can't be more interested in helping you than you're interested in being helped. Right. At some point, you get to a point of diminishing return.
Sure.
Right. And so, yeah, when I had sailors that didn't achieve what they could have or should have, then yeah, it is a failure on my part, unless I can absolutely state unequivocally that I did everything I could for you and you just couldn't
You
get
didn't, right?
which happens, right? Like I did everything I could for you. You still got a DUI. Like I can't fix that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
So
it's that personal accountability,
yeah, if because I've said this for a long time, like I will take 99 average people that want to be there over 100 superstars that don't.
Yeah. Oh, I agree.
Right. Because I will make these people above average.
Right.
I will make them superstars.
Right.
If you think you've already arrived and you're not interested in being there, I can't do that much with you.
Right. Yep. Yeah. I mean, if you don't have the interest in whatever you're doing, you're not going to learn. You're not open, to anything. So, you say that, you decided you wanted to focus on the 10%, in the top 10% versus the bottom. There's another advantage there that I could see, but it kind of goes back to, and I talked about this on another video, but the best early on NCO I had, this guy Sergeant Alfred, I still talk to him occasionally, great guy. He told me, he said, learn your job, learn the job of the guy above you and watch the guy above him. Right. But as I started to gain responsibility, in a couple of years down the road, and now I'm responsible for stuff, Sergeant Alfred would start telling me, now teach the guys below you and bring them up. So if you focus on that top 10%, one of the things I would think that you want to tell them is, hey, be paying attention to these guys, maybe that, the same rank as you, but aren't quite caught up with you, and bring them up. Because one, by teaching, you learn deeper, you learn deeper that skill. It improves your communication, but it's also a good starter step, I think, for leadership is, bringing those people up, instructing the guys below you to bring somebody up with them.
Yeah, you always want to make sure that in my experience, like at the end of the day, the legacy that you leave, like the Navy's running fine without me.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Since I left it. So the legacy is the people that I trained are my legacy to the Navy.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, that's yeah. What a great way to look at it.
So that is what you always want to, in my mind, I always wanted to strive for. It's like when somebody said they were trained by Justin Graver, it's like, oh yeah, that guy knows stuff.
Right.
Right. Or that guy's going to be a good leader. Or I understand where they're at. So when it all comes down, then they train somebody else. Right. And then 20 years from now, nobody knows my name.
Right.
But somebody still writes in a charge book in order to remember where you come from. So you have to leave.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's how you achieve a legacy
Right.
in that environment, I think.
Yeah. Pass it on. Yeah. No, that's great. I like that. So we, you made chief. That was a great party, by the way.
It was indeed.
Yeah, that was in upstate New York, and what was it, in November or December? It was
September.
September. Okay, yeah, that's right. Because I came back up in December for the wedding for my cousins. But yeah, that was a great party. So you were chief there, and then eventually you shipped out to an aircraft carrier, the Abraham Lincoln, and at that point you started gaining more responsibility.
Yeah.
So now you're interacting more with officers also, right?
Right. Specifically charged the chief petty officers is training junior officers how to be in charge.
Right.
The junior officer comes to you with a college degree, and sometimes that's it.
Right.
Right. If they're an ensign, right? They're brand new to the military. They don't know anything about anything.
Right.
Right. They went to, sometimes they had ROTC training, right? So maybe they can recognize pay grades.
Right.
Or they had some rudimentary leadership training. If they went to one of the service academies, obviously they're better prepared for the military side of things. Arguably. But
well, and I mean, I've had officers from all three, like the service academies, the quasi service academies like Norwich and stuff, and then the ROTC, and they all pretty much come out just as green, when
Yeah,
they
they
get to
don't
the
know
line
it.
units.
They don't know anything, and I
Right.
don't know why we insist on placing a 22-year-old in charge of things,
Right.
but we do.
Right.
All services do it.
Yeah.
I think topic for another conversation.
Yeah.
But in any case, you have someone who is in charge but doesn't know anything.
Right.
Right. So you immediately have to start instructing them on the culture of the organization, what it takes to be an effective leader,
Right.
what it takes to be a passable technician of whatever division they happen to be in charge of. Right. So my goal was always to make like the division officer to a reasonably good E5 at whatever skill the division was responsible
for. Yeah. Right.
Because if they don't have any technical knowledge of it, and that was always well, they're there for leadership. Yeah, but how do you supervise something? How do you review something that you don't even speak the language? Right? How do you review a technical procedure when you don't even know the components?
Right.
So because they have to sign them,
right,
approving them,
right. How do they approve something if they don't know whether or not it passed or failed?
And it's really easy for them to go, well, chief, is this good? Well, yes, sir. Sign away.
Right.
Well, but you didn't teach them anything. Right.
Yeah.
Especially if it goes wrong.
Right, because it's going to be they're going to be the one that's in trouble.
And what did they learn? Not to trust the chief.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So you have to make sure that you spend the time to invest the time in them to learn.
Thank you for watching, and this concludes part 2 of our 4-part interview with retired Command Master Chief Justin Gray. Be sure to like and subscribe our page so that you can be up to date on our latest videos both in this series and in others. Have a good day.